Wolastoqew, Nokmusuk, Naganmusumsuk, Wolewancholadwewagan, Giziminwakiak Chunilan, Nilanajdigich, Nalayudmanenchiwechgawabazitit, Nidlage. This is a prayer, an honor code, that back in 1994 I was invited to Ojibwe territory, actually, in Garden River, to fast. The reason that I wanted to fast was I was facing a lot of the hurdles. I think that's why I wanted to come to this conference about facing challenges. There was a lot of challenges in my work as a linguist and revitalizing the language. And so one elder said, go fast and sacrifice, and your ancestors will reward you with a vision. That's what I did. And when that prayer came to me, I remember thinking, because as Pat had mentioned, some students that carry all this baggage. You know, my grandparents were punished. That's why they didn't speak the language, but they were still blaming grandparents and uncles and aunts for not continuing to carry the language. And I wanted to honor those ones who carried the language anyways, despite all, things that were coming at them, that baggage that Pat talked about. Despite all the baggage, they still carried their language. So when I left my fast, went back to New Brunswick, I went to each and every speaker and I said that prayer I just told you. I'm sharing it in English because I want you to also put it in your language. It's also said in some of the schools that I work in, and it's some students we have our traditional songs that welcome the students to our school in their language. As soon as they get off the bus, the whole staff will be out there, just like the way the Hawaiians did it, that I witnessed when I went there to their World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education. So we're doing that in our territory as well. And the prayer means, grandmothers and grandfathers, thank you for the language you have saved for us. It's now our turn to save it for the ones not yet born. May that be the truth. That's the truth I want to carry. So in order to do that, we look in our communities and you look for where is language absent. And Pat mentioned, and everybody, has mentioned, it's absent in the home. So I approached, and I remember Jerry supporting this project a few years ago. From the Womb to Beyond, it's called in English. And it's bringing language to prenatal classes so that the babies in the womb can hear the language. And you just tell the parents, you can work on your computer, whatever you want. I'm just going to kneel on the ground and I'm going to talk to your baby in the language. And some people will bring magazines. They'll be reading that while I'm talking to the baby in the womb. But lately, nobody's bringing any books home. The parents are going. So what I had to do to prepare to be able to bring language to the prenatal class was to also convince them of a traditional ceremony we did of burying the placenta. That was a really bigger issue than I thought, because most hospitals weren't prepared for women to be asking for their placenta to be taken home to their communities. So I had to do a lot of in-service sessions for the medical field, the obstetric wards. Matter of fact, just last week I did a session in one of the new hospitals that was built in our province to their new obstetrics ward to be ready for the women that will be asking for that. I had to take some training, what they call doula. It's an English word, but you're just, I don't mean just, an important role, a labor coach. So we trained women in our territory to learn how to labor coach and be in the delivery rooms with our new babies that are coming as a welcoming to our ancestors. So we sing in the delivery room and welcome our babies, what we call our ancestors. We call that honoring ancestors, is singing to those ancestors that are coming back to us in their language. And so it's spreading. I work in 7 communities altogether, 6 communities, and one community does it as an entire community celebration I do the naming ceremony. All the babies that are born, all the placentas are kept in a special freezer the community bought, and they're named. And then in the spring, on Mother's Day weekend, we have a wonderful community gathering, and the most that I've had at one time to name was 17. Last year I had 11, and the year before I had 13. This has only been a few years, but the whole community comes out, and the way that we do it, we've asked the community to designate sacred spaces for us to bring the community. And I told the community, because you're honoring your ancestors in this way, good things will come to your community. And trust me, good things have been happening in that community. Where it was just blank space, now we have a longhouse. We have teepees. We have sweat lodges. We have gardens, what we call medicine wheel gardens, to honor all the babies' placentas that have been buried there. It's drug and alcohol free, where it used to be the favorite place for people to go to do their, habits. They respect that area now. So wonderful things have been happening for that community. That's one of the things that we've done. And so some parents are Catholic, and so they think they have to choose one over the other. But I said no, because I've been working with the priests. When they do the baptisms, I've asked them if I could incorporate some of our traditions, because what the priest will do when they baptize a child, they'll bless, the top of the head, or anoint, and then anoint here. In our traditional way, we anoint the baby's feet because they haven't touched the earth yet, to prepare them for their earth walk. So while the priest does, his Catholic blessing, I also do and welcome the child in as well, and then we give the child their spirit name. That's so important, because all of those babies that we've named, and I think I've named close to 40 babies in the 3 years, that's 40 Maliseet concepts, not words, concepts that are going to be saved forever. And so what's been happening, it snowballed to the point where the older brothers and sisters, well, how come we don't have a name? So in October, I did naming for the older children. And when I leave here tomorrow, this weekend, I have 7 to do who are adults waiting, but they're fasting for their names because they're adults. So it's something that's just kind of snowballed and has become, so it's that spirituality that we're incorporating into saving the language. From that also, our grandmother teachings, the Head Start, we bless the feet of the babies coming into our Head Start programs. And I did a program called Grandmother Teachings. And so how babies will cry when their parents leave? Well, we know that crying is a chant. When a baby is born, then their first cry, doctors will call it baby's first cry. We call it baby's first chant. So we'll start chanting with the babies, and automatically they'll stop crying. And so we say, thank you for chanting coming through the door. This is what we do for you when you come into the world. So you're chanting for us when you come into the Head Start. So that's the idea. And then we bless their feet. And today, your feet, your earth walk will be in love. Your earth walk will be in understanding. Your earth walk will be in learning. And and when you leave here, your earth walk will be in teaching what you have learned here today to take home with you. And then of course we do puberty ceremonies, because those ceremonies were taken away from us. So now we have to. So I started with grandmothers, because I wanted grandmothers to be able to explain the ceremony based on how it was for them, rather than them telling their granddaughters, you go and do your puberty ceremony, and the granddaughter's going to say, well, did you do yours? And they'll say no. So I started with grandmothers, mothers. We've been doing it about 8 years now, 9 years, and I have young women, and not now young men are asking. So I'm just looking for help, for people to help me do those ceremonies, because it's a demand, of being able to fulfill that. We also do some of the puberty ceremonies that I've done. I recently did a traditional wedding ceremony for one of the young people that I did a puberty ceremony for, and he came to me and he says, would you do a traditional ceremony? So I got the paperwork done so I can I always thought you had to go to the province to get that license to be able to marry, but it's your tribal council that puts your name in as being, capable of performing traditional ceremonies since you're a traditional person. And not just that, we do death feasts. And how the death feast, what has happened when I started doing death feasts is from my own family, the ones that I've lost. And what ended up happening is we started a new program called Chill Wolastoqew. In my language, that literally means for healthy mind, body, and spirit. We notice a lot of addictions in our communities, and so there was a lot of problems. So the psychiatrists and psychologists were always prescribing. So I approached the psychiatrist and the psychologist and asked if I could be a part of their healing, because I said sometimes it's not a pill they need. It might just be a one-day fast, might be a naming ceremony, might be a sweat lodge, and allow me to use my services to help my people in a traditional way. So it worked, and so the Health Canada put a lot of funding in for me to have a team so that we can do traditional healing in the mental health field. And so we work side by side with the clinical team, with the provincial team as well, so it's recognized by the province as well as a way, and we use language as part of that healing. So as I said last night, language is healing, language is humor. I'm definitely using language in a healing way. At the that's my community work. I also teach at the University of New Brunswick as an elder in residence. It's a new position that we just started to promote, because all students that come to our class, like Pat said, the baggage that they bring from their homes and they bring to university, it affects their learning environment. So we put in a proposal for our university to establish an elder in residence seat, so that elder will be there on a daily basis to be supportive to all students. And so it spread because another university in our province just hired their Mi'kmaq elder in residence. So there's two of us in the province that do that. And trust me, those students come in and ask for the smudge. Those students come in and say, when's the next sweat lodge? Matter of fact, I put in a proposal for a sweat lodge at our campus, because I want the campus to really fulfill their commitment to open the doors to our, to our people. And if it's ceremony that our students need, then the university should be prepared to help us with that. So we started a speaker series, and the first speaker series was just like, I've only been in the position for 4 months, but already I'm seeing really wonderful things happening. And we had a speaker series. I wanted local elder scholars to come and talk about our traditions, our worldviews, and that's been happening. And of course, the work that I do is acculturation, it's called. It's bringing Maliseet and Mi'kmaq culture into the provincial school system, the public school system, so that the whole province celebrates our traditions. So we're putting together, we have videos that we've already done, and so the teachers have an online place where they look at all materials. And so we've been filling up so that the students can actually see it in the classroom, our elders telling stories, and rather than the teacher reinterpreting what the elder had said. So it's our actual elders that we've been bringing together to share stories in the classroom. And out of that, we're doing the books like Pat has done. We've taken our stories, and where we get our stories, because a lot of what's happened a lot is we've taken English and we're teaching it in our languages into our classrooms. We wanted to make sure that we used our own stories. So a research project that we headed was recording remaining speakers, and we had less than 100 of remaining speakers who remembered what life was like before the dams were built. That meant before shopping malls, before the Walmarts, before the, all of drugstores. And we wanted them to tell their stories on how they survived before electricity. Beautiful treasure of stories. They are online. We're putting them online, and you can just go, I think, beforethedam.com I think is what it is. But you can actually listen to our elders. And so we're using their stories as the foundation for the books that we'll be producing that Pat has suggested. So, just recently we heard we have our people in prison. They don't, because of drinking or drugging, they're in prison. And when they sober up, they don't know how they got there. So I have a language program that I just put online. It's 10 lessons. It's through a radio station. What they did is I did 10 hours of Maliseet on the radio station a week so that people who didn't get to university or heard the language could actually tune in on the radio. And in the morning I would do a blessing ceremony. In the afternoon I do reciting a poem or a story. And in the evening around supper time I would say, are you going bowling tonight? Here's some phrases to teach you how to go bowling in your language. Are you going to shoot pool tonight? Here's some phrases you might want to use to take to the pool hall. Okay. So that's the, and bowling, pool, golf, whatever it is, shopping, bingo, that new poker game, that Texas Hold'em, I think we did phrases on that as well. But that was around the supper time, assuming that people were eating together. And then, of course, we did prayers in the evening, did the rosary for the elders who were Catholic, and we recited that. And for them, it was saying how nice it is to hear my prayers in my language. So we're doing those online, and we have 10 more that we're preparing now. And our veterans, I noticed there was something going on the veterans. The national chief wanted the Flanders Field and the Remembrance Prayer to be translated into our languages so that they can be presented in Ottawa. We've done that, and so we're going to be honoring our elders, and so we go to communities and we recite it in our language. And then and also the Indigenous rights of Indigenous peoples. I think everybody should translate that into their language. Give it to your leaders, because when you translate it from English to your language, it has more weight than when we recite it in English. And then what I'm doing with my translation that I did for the national chief is I'm giving it to all the chiefs and their tribal councils and doing in-service sessions to teach them how to read it and to understand it. So that way, that worldview is in their tribal council. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And I've heard some really wonderful things. I came here for medicine, and a lot of medicine I'll be taking back so that I can continue to heal in my language. Thanks to all of you. Wiliwan Upchich.